Hello everyone and welcome back to the Neo Model Railway. Now I'm pretty happy with the work I did last time with laying all of the cork underlay. I did learn something and I would do things slightly different next time, and this is all just part of the learning process. But I would definitely create longer strips. I would have run one all the way straight through here, and then another strip straight through here, here and here, and then filling in the gaps around the points after. I used lots of little cuts. I was trying to save cork. I mean, ultimately I've got 10 meters of the stuff. I could have done this probably 20 times over, but in hindsight, I would have ended up with a much nicer finish. So what I'm going to do straight away is I'm just going to mark down where these points are, because I'm going to have to lift the track. So I want to make sure that where I put the points, that one's quite hard to get into. I'll be able to see this shortly. Exactly where the bar is, one there and then one here. Okay, I'm happy with that. Those are the points. Now the other thing I want to do is put dropper wires on. I don't want to rely on these points transmitting the current across the track. Some of these do have little connector plates under the track. I think those are the Hornby ones, whereas the Pico ones don't. The Pico ones seem to rely purely on the physical contact between the rail and the rail here. So these might be better, but when we come to ballast this, that could be an issue. And also over time, those are likely to lose their springiness and become less and less reliable. So I'm going to put more droppers on. I've got one over here, which I put down last time, and that went really well. I'm going to put probably some on every one of these lengths and certainly down this end. I do also want to add some isolated track. I'm hoping to have a couple of locos on this layout at the same time. Now, I won't be able to run them concurrently, but it might be nice to have perhaps one in the engine shed waiting, getting ready for the day's work, while another one's out on the layout, getting all the wagons and stuff ready. Then I can swap over, put one in a siding with an isolated track while activating the other one, bring her out, move her around. So I will need to pick a couple of key points where I can cut the current in order to let that happen. Straight away, if I'm placing the engine shed over here in this area, I definitely feel like I'm going to be isolating this track. So I'll probably put some plastic fish plates on here, and then I'll wire this up separately and have it switched. I'm also thinking I may do this one, which is why I've left this track on. Now I could just use this, in all honesty. I could remove this block and then I could just wire it underneath, and I could do the same up here because I do have two of these Pico isolating tracks. That would mean that I could have an engine in the shed, another one could come out, run up and down the main line, grab some wagons, position things, do a little bit of shunting, and then hold in the siding here next to the factory or the warehouse, or alternatively hold in this siding here. Then I can activate this one, bring this loco out, do a little bit of extra work, finish things off, and therefore have a little bit more fun and a bit more interest with two locos on one analog track. So the baseboard and the track has been put away. I've got out all of the stuff I need to solder on these dropper wires. I've got my first two pieces of track here. I've got a fair amount to get through, so let's get going. So there we are. All the dropper wires have been wired onto the track. The track is now back on the board and it's looking good. However, I will say, now I'm seeing it in situ, I am wondering whether or not it's a little bit excessive, whether I've gone a bit crazy with dropper wires. I just want to make sure that the points work. I didn't have any issues in testing, but I'm just thinking by the time I've got ballast on there and glue and scenery, grass and everything else, I don't want to then have to unpick and unravel and basically rip up track in order to make running repairs. I'd rather add more wires at this stage than have to go back and fix things later on. So as I said in opening, this track here, and this track here are going to be isolated. This one is already using a Pico isolated track, so I've gone this side of it. So this will actually be fully powered at the beginning. I will actually just power this whole thing up just to get things working and make sure that the actual wiring loom is fine. Then I'll come back and add some switches later on. Okay, enough waffle. I need to get changed into some different attire. I need to get outside in the cold because I need to drill the holes to drop all these wires through. Don't panic, you're not tuned into Gardener's World. I just wanted to take a moment to enjoy the sunshine. In February, it's been grey for the last week or so, but now, yeah, clear blue skies. I've got everything out that I need, so let's get drilling. So you can see on the cork where I have marked the spots where the dropper wires are going to go through the board. We've also got these horizontal lines which indicate where the various points are. I'm going to need to drill a slightly larger hole for the point motors because it needs enough clearance for the pin to move backwards and forwards. Okay, let's lock and load. For the dropper wires, a 4 to 4.5mm drill bit will be absolutely perfect. So that's all of the holes drilled for the dropper wires. I'm now going to put in a bigger drill bit and move on to the points. I've scaled up to an 8mm drill bit for this particular application. That should give me just enough clearance for the points to work. I know that these are going to go roughly central to each of these switches, but because the track constantly moves, I can slightly adjust things. So I've got 1 to 2mm tolerance. So as long as I get my holes drilled roughly centre, I should be fine when I come to fix the track down. Now you may want to pilot hole these, but I'm just going to go straight in. And the last one. I'm very happy with that. All of the dropper wire holes are in, as you can see, and we've got the ones for the points. If I need to widen these up, I can come back with a slightly larger drill bit, that's not a problem. But for now, I need to get the board back inside into the warm, get myself out of this blazing sunshine before I catch a tan, and get the dropper wires pulled through. So don't go anywhere, there's plenty more to do. Just fitting the last piece of track. That goes in there nicely, and I just need to poke these wires through here. Get the black one in as well. It's a bit fiddly. I'm obviously being careful not to bend the track. There she goes. I can get myself underneath and pull those through carefully. There we go. Everything is in position. That's going to bend around there nicely. Fantastic. So there we are then. Everything is on the board. I haven't tacked anything down just yet, so the track is literally being held in place by the dropper wires on the rear of the board. Let me just flip the board over and let you have a look at what's going on. And there we go, hopefully fairly self-explanatory. I have enough length on these cables here such that I should be able to run a bus wire right down the centre of the board and out one of the two ends. Looking at the board from behind, it would actually likely be this end here. That was my original plan. However, as things often do with this channel and my project, I have slightly changed the location that I'm intending on putting the controller. So what that means is I may end up actually having the bus wire come in from this location at the top, in effect from the side where the big grassy hill is going to be located. And so in which case I may run the bus wire around and then straight down the middle. That just gives me a little bit of extra to play with if I ever need it in the future. I could just come down here, but then I'd have to split it in some kind of T configuration. So I think just running a loop for now will be fine. And then what I can do for the rest of the components, so all of the lights and the other accessories, is I can run a second loom around and down the bottom, which can handle most of those as well. Now those will be different coloured wires, just so I can keep track of what's going on. But I think that plan should work. I'm going to get the bus wire ready. I'm going to braid it, in other words, coil it together, and then I'm going to start clipping things in. This is where things start to get interesting. Okay, I've got everything I need here. I've got my wire, I've got my strippers, I've got my cutters. So I worry about drilling another hole later because I have a funny feeling one of these point motors aren't quite located properly and I'm going to have to slightly increase the size of one of those. So I will do this cabling first and I'll take the board back outside and finish that off shortly. Okay, so let's make sure I've got a decent length on here. I want some length off the board from outside. So I give myself about 6 or 7 inches there. And I'm just going to literally just hand this round the perimeter. And then I'm going to run it all the way back down the middle to approximately here, because I think this pair of dropper wires here will actually be the last one. So if you imagine those coming up into that kind of position, having to do this one-handed while I hold the wire against the edge of the board, and then the bus wire can come in and complete the circuit around there. That feels about right. Give myself a little bit extra just in case. And I'll snip that there. And then basically get exactly the same for the red wire. Trying to do this elegantly, but there is no way to do this elegantly, really. There we go. So the end is about there. So we should have 2 lengths of cable. Excuse the cluttering. 2 lengths of cable that are essentially the same length. And there we go, to the end. Good job. Right, next step, let's just clear our tools off, is I need to twist these together. That apparently does 2 things. First of all, keeps things tidy, which is fairly obvious, but also it kind of reduces the amount of interference you get. Obviously, when you run electricity down cables, you create interference. I'm not using Bluetooth on this because it's not going to be using the HM7000 DCC decoders. This is an analog system, but we do want to reduce the amount of impedance we get through the cables. So I'm just going to give those a bit of a twist. I don't know the best way to do that. Normally I would put it in a chuck of a drill, fasten the other end and just spin it up really quickly. But actually I don't want it to be quite so tightly coiled. So I'll go do this off camera because I think this will be quite fiddly and we'll come back in a minute. I'll see you shortly. And there we go. That was an easy job, put it in the chuck of a drill and just simply tie off both ends and give it a good old wind up. I've done it tighter than I actually needed it, and that just means that in transit it will loosen up, and that's good because I want to be able to stretch these apart if I need to, particularly when starting to get things coupled together. I'm going to clip the bus wire into place roughly where it needs to be so that things remain tidy. And for that, I'm simply going to use these sticky surface mounted plastic cable clips. That should be more than enough. So if I'm thinking that this is going to be the final pair of dropper wires, then essentially the end of the cable is going to be somewhere in that region. So let's just get roughly organised. Coming down into there, that's fine. So we'll put a clip and a little tip. Obviously these are kind of like a C shape, if that makes sense. Wherever your wire is going to be pulling tension, make sure that it's pulling against the flat end. If it's pulling against the end that clips open, probably hard to see on camera, then you're just going to have all kinds of issues and it will eventually just pull out. So if I pop one about there, let's take the backing off of this. If I can get my fingernail under that. They're 3M pads, so they're going to be decently sticky. And let's go pretty much there. So that will clip under there, and this one will connect up in that location. Let's pop another one roughly in that location. Going to keep these fairly evenly spaced. I'll pop one in. Actually, I'm going to turn this around the other way, so because we've got cables coming from both directions, we'll go in there, and then I'll pop one on the corner before it goes up onto the side. So we'll go about there. I'll just clip these under. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I'll start to run a couple around the edges. So we'll go about there. Now obviously this is upside down because gravity is going to pull the cables this way. So the rigid part of the clip is this side. Then we'll go in the corner. And then we'll have one on the return. And then just a couple more along this back edge here. So this is approximately halfway, so actually I'll just go in there. And then one in the middle, I think. One, two. 1, 2. Clip, and final one in. And then this is the excess that we have left, which is going to go through the board and out to the controller. So there are lots of ways that we can attach the dropper wires to the main bus wire. We could solder them by splicing, simply creating a gap in the sheath and then coming down with the dropper wire and soldering it in place. And then if you wanted to, you could either tape it or use some shrink to get that protected. You could run everything into a distribution block, and you see those really cheaply online. So you'll have your power come in and then the block will go out into multiple locations. Now I'm using a main bus wire here, so that kind of idea is out the window, but I may look at that as an option for the accessories power. And then finally, and probably the easiest method, is to use some sort of splicing clip. And that simply clamps around the cables, and it has a small metal blade that pinches in and then creates that metal contact. So you can almost T-shape two cables together. And that's the method I'm going to use this time. So I have picked up a cheap set of splicing cables, and these are called quick splice T-tap wire connectors. You'll see them all over the internet. They're about £6 or £7. This is 120 pieces, way more than I'm ever going to need. So essentially what you have is this clip here, and you can see probably just about, if I come a bit closer to the camera, there's a piece of metal in there. Your main bus wire is going to come through in this location and it gets pinched into that U shape. Once this is clamped over the main bus wire, you then also have this piece which can attach to your dropper wire and then come up and feed, if I can get it in there, clips in like that. This is when I return back to my lovely strippers, because in this section here we have this crimping tool. So I would simply place that section in there and then pinch down really hard, and that will crimp the cable in place. I've got the tool, I've got the clips, let's give it a go. I'm really happy with this. It's turned out really well. I am a little bit nervous because obviously I haven't tested this yet and things could still go wrong, but I'm really impressed with how neat and tidy this is. I do like things being in their place and this has gone okay. So I think I would recommend using the T-splicing method. Unless you're particularly adept at using a soldering iron and solder, this was just so easy to do, even for a beginner like me. The only thing I want to do is kind of tidy up this loose end, which is the end of the loom, but I can probably just add an extra clip, probably around there somewhere, just to keep that flat and stop things dangling down too much. Right, I think it's time I got the controller out and gave it a quick test before I finally tack the track down. Now I'm nervous, genuinely nervous, but also so excited. I love this. I'm loving this about the hobby. You do these little things, you don't know if they're going to work, especially if you're a first timer, a complete noob like me. I'm excited. So I've got my combi wired up, as you can see. The cable's going under the table. This is ready to go. I've got the J83 out. I think it's time we gave her a proper run. Okay, let me just adjust that camera and we'll give it a go. My old friend, let's see if you can have a proper run. We didn't get a chance to test this part earlier on, so check out those videos if you haven't seen that. When we're dry fitting, I'm just making sure the layout works. Let me just make sure the points are good. So we're going to come up and around, up and down. I say that, it may not even work. I may blow something here. I've got the controller angled so you can see what's going on. So power's off, forward. Just make sure, yeah, she's fully on. Here we go. Oh dear. Power's up and she's off. Ease off there. Let's go reverse and set these points straight down. Bit janky there, and that is my join, my terrible solder joint. We're going to go straight down into this siding here, where the factory warehouse will be. Lovely, listen to that. She's smooth going forward, but she's a bit grindy going backwards, very gritty. Oh yes, very gritty indeed. Let's go, let's just do the sidings in order. Straight in. No problem at all. Yeah, we'll just come straight back out. Probably needs a bit of maintenance, a bit of grease. Probably needs a good old run for half an hour in reverse, because I don't think I ever really ran her in reverse, so she's just not used to it. Steady. In fact, you know, let's just see what the crawl's like. Pretty good. She's not a massive fan of these tight curves. Oh, wonderful. Back we go. A bit gritty. Over the isolating track there. So we know that's working. I'm really, really chuffed indeed. So we're going to run straight down, and this time we're going to come into this final siding. Ease off, reverse, and here we go. No! She stopped right on the frog and right on the wire here. Let's just check that. I think that was just a bit of bad luck. Oh, I can see I've actually got, okay. I need to clean the track. I can see where the rails have got hot when I was soldering. I've actually got some of the mat stuck to it, which really isn't going to help. Let's clean that off. And just by pure coincidence, this point and the frog is exactly where those pickups end up. That should help. Let's try that again. Yeah, a little bit jerky. I'll give the track a full clean. But you know what? It works. I am super chuffed. So that's the first time I've ever laid cork and wired up a layout. I officially have a layout that works. It isn't just a train set. Well done me. Well done girl, you did me proud. Right, the next thing I need to do is get my tacks and my small hammer and tack down the track. However, before I do that, I need to check some of the tolerances on the holes underneath some of the points, because next time around I'm going to be fitting these. These are Gagemaster PM2 solenoid switch motors. If I need to do any last minute drilling to ensure there's enough tolerance for these, I had better do that before I start fixing the track. I think the easiest way to do this is simply to insert the pin of the point motor into the hole of the switch and see if there's enough clearance. So we should, once that's in, be able to move backwards and forwards, which we can do, and it's not impeding with the hole underneath. So that's fine. If you imagine that's fixed in place, there's a little bit too much wobbling there, but there she goes. Okay, that one seems to be okay. I'll have a quick check of this one. Well, that's close. That is quite close. Yeah, that one should be okay. Let's check this one. Now these points are not great, I must admit, but that's okay. This one down here, This one I can see has got loads of tolerance. The hole is smack bang in the middle. However, it was this one here where I had my concerns, because I can see, looking down, the hole is very much on the edge. So let me just get this pushed down as if it would be tightly tacked. Pin in vertically. Actually, that one's okay. I'm surprised at that. So I think we're good. In that case, it's hammer and nails time. I have a set of Pico Streamline track fixing pins. Now, I'm sure they will do the job, but I've just got a gut feeling that these are going to be bending left, right and centre. I'll do a couple. If I get frustrated, I'll be using some bigger pins. Now I've got these out of the bag, they are absolutely minuscule, and I am going to have to use, annoyingly, some tweezers to hold them in place. Yeah, I think these are going to get on my nerves, and I actually think the heads, they almost look, yeah, okay, so that is not even going to work, is it? So I've got a hole there, and I've got a hole there. So the Hornby track, the holes are too big. What a fantastic episode. I managed to get so much done. All the track in my mind is finished, apart from snipping off some of the ends, which will come later on when I start to look at the scenery. It's all wired up, it works, and I've now tacked it down, so that is not going anywhere. Speaking of not going anywhere, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because in the next episode I'm going to be putting on a base layer of brown acrylic paint, and then a little bit more electronics, because I'm going to start wiring up the point motors. I've had an absolute blast with this episode, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Please stick a comment down below and let me know what you think. I'm really keen to hear from all of you, whether it's good or bad or just to say hi. I think I'm going to finish off by grabbing out some trucks. I'm going to get the Sentinel on the layout, and I'm just going to double check everything's working. But until next time, everyone, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.